I've lived alone in this small town for nearly 8 years now, ever since my husband passed and my children moved across the country. Christmas Day has always been quiet. Not sad, just quiet in a way that settles into the walls like dust. That morning, I made myself a cup of peppermint coffee, opened the curtains to let in the cold winter light, and was about to sit down when something caught my eye through the frosted glass of my front door. A small red envelope. At first, I thought it was a flyer or maybe a neighbor's kid leaving a holiday card. But when I opened the door, I saw it wasn't just any card. It was sealed with gold wax, an old-fashioned emblem pressed into it, the kind you'd see in antique shops or in those Victorian Christmas stories. My name was handwritten across the front. My full name. Not miss, not ma'am, not neighbor. Just my name. In handwriting I didn't recognize. And the strangest thing, it was warm. As if someone had just placed it there moments before. I looked up and down the street, searching for whoever left it, but the world was still and empty. Even the snow looked untouched. I hesitated. For a moment I wondered if I should even open it. But something, curiosity, fate, loneliness, I'm not sure, pushed me to break the seal. Inside was a single sheet of cream-colored paper, folded neatly into thirds. And at the top, written in elegant cursive, were 4 words that made my heart stop. I'm finally coming home. Home? Who? To me? Before I could make sense of it, I saw a second line, smaller, trembling, almost regretful. Please, be here when I arrive. I sat down right there in the doorway, the cold air creeping around my ankles. I'd never seen handwriting like this. And yet, something about it felt familiar in a way that stirred a memory I couldn't quite reach. Before I read the rest of the letter, let me ask you this. If you found a mysterious envelope with your name on it on Christmas Day, would you open it right away? Or wait? Tell me in the comments, I'm curious. I sat there for a long moment, the envelope trembling slightly in my hands. The house was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking in the kitchen, steady, patient, almost urging me to keep reading. So I unfolded the letter fully. There was more handwriting beneath those first 2 lines, written in the same elegant, almost old-world style. But the moment I read the next sentence, my breath caught. I should have come years ago. Years ago? My heart was beating faster than it had in a long time. Then another line. You don't know how many Christmases I stood outside your door, and couldn't knock. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Someone had been here, more than once. Watching. Hesitating. I kept reading. I never stopped thinking about you. Not once. I'm sorry for the silence, and for what it cost us both. Cost us? I pressed my hand against my chest, trying to calm the sudden heaviness there. Whatever this was, it wasn't a prank. The writing, the seal, the tone. Someone meant every word. And then I reached the final lines. They were written more shakily than the rest, as if the writer's hand had trembled. I hope you can forgive me. I'll be there tonight, after sunset. If the porch light is on, I'll know you still want me. I set the letter down on my knee, suddenly aware of the cold draft curling around me from the open doorway. My porch light, the old yellow bulb I rarely even used, suddenly felt like the most important thing in my life. Someone was coming. Someone who had waited years to return. Someone who thought I might not want to see them at all. I looked back at that final line again, my eyes lingering on the unsteady handwriting. Tonight. After sunset. Why did that feel familiar? As if I had once known someone who would write exactly like this. But the harder I tried to grasp the memory, the faster it slipped away, like trying to catch snowfall with bare hands. Whatever was coming, whatever story this letter carried with it. I had only a few hours to prepare for the truth. and I suddenly wasn't sure if I was ready for it. I kept the letter beside me all morning, as if letting go of it would make the moment vanish. But the truth was, a name kept circling in my mind, soft and persistent, like a melody I used to know. I didn't want to say it, not even to myself, because saying it would make everything real again. Instead, I stood up and walked slowly through the house. The living room. The hall. Each space stirred an echo I had long buried. I stopped when I reached the old bookshelf. There, tucked between two dusty photo albums, was a small wooden box I hadn't opened in over 20 years. I pulled it out carefully, brushing my thumb across the carved lid. I knew what was inside even before I opened it. A bundle of old photographs. A faded ribbon. And a single dried sprig of holly wrapped in thin paper. My breath hitched. I picked up the first photo. A much younger version of me stood beside someone whose smile I had once memorized. A girl with bright winter eyes. Always wearing a red scarf. Always laughing before she finished her sentences. I felt the room tilt slightly. Could it be her? I swallowed hard and looked closer, as if the old photo might suddenly reveal some hidden message. But all I saw was a memory I had tried so long to silence. We used to walk this town together every Christmas Eve. We promised we'd stay in touch after she moved away. But letters stopped coming. Life pulled us in different directions. And eventually, all that remained was an ache I learned to live beside. But the handwriting. The way the writer said years. The trembling signature I didn't quite recognize. It couldn't be her. Could it? I set the photo down, feeling my throat tighten. If it was her, why come back now? Why leave a letter instead of knocking? Why ask for forgiveness? I reached for the dried sprig of holly, the one she once tucked into my coat pocket on our last Christmas together. My hands shook as I held it. The truth was starting to form, slow and heavy, inside my chest. And just as the realization began to surface, my phone buzzed loudly on the kitchen table, shattering the silence. I walked over, half dreading what I'd see. But the screen showed something I never expected. Unknown caller, calling. My heart stopped. Tonight, someone was coming to my door. But someone was also calling me, right now. And for a moment, just a heartbeat, I wondered if the past was already reaching out, earlier than promised. I stared at the phone buzzing on the table, its vibration rattling my nerves as much as the wood beneath it. For a moment, I just watched it ring. As if the screen itself held the answer to everything. Unknown caller. But something deep in my chest whispered. Pick it up. So I did. My voice sounded smaller than I expected. Hello? At first, there was only the sound of someone breathing softly. Then a quiet, trembling voice, feminine, unsure, broke through the static. Is this still your number? My grip tightened on the phone. The voice felt familiar. Not like a memory. More like a song I hadn't heard in decades, but could still hum in the dark. Yes, I managed. Who is this? A long pause followed, as if the caller was wrestling with herself, before she spoke again. It's someone who owes you an explanation. My heart thudded painfully. The letter. The handwriting. The holly sprig in my hand. Is this about the note you left at my door? I asked. The silence that followed felt like it stretched into years. Finally, she exhaled. A soft, uneven breath. Yes. I pressed my palm against the counter to steady myself. Are you the one who moved away? The one I haven't heard from since. The line crackled, interrupting me. I'm close, she whispered. Not far from your house. I wasn't sure if you'd want to hear from me. The tremor in her voice wasn't fear. It was sorrow. A kind I recognized instantly. I've had a lot of years to think, she continued. But tonight, I didn't know how to face you. So I left the letter. And I ran. A sudden gust of wind rattled the window behind me, making me turn. The snow outside was falling heavier now, blurring the world into soft white edges. Why now? I asked, barely above a whisper. After all this time, why today? Another breath. Sharp. Emotional. Because Christmas was the only day I knew you'd still remember me. My chest tightened. Before I could respond, her voice shifted, lower, hesitant. I'm sorry. I should go. No, wait, I said quickly, louder than intended. Don't hang up. But in my haste, the phone slipped slightly in my grip, and she heard the clatter. Are you all right? She asked. Yes. Just, don't go. This time, she didn't answer immediately. Instead, I heard the faint sound of a car door opening and closing. The rustle of fabric. Footsteps crunching through snow. She wasn't somewhere far away. She was moving. Where are you? I asked. Her reply was soft. Almost fragile. I'm not sure if you truly want to see me. I do. A long beat of silence. Then open your front door. My breath caught. She was here. Already here. I turned toward the hallway, heart pounding like I was 20 again. But before I reached the handle, before I touched the cold metal, her quiet voice came through the phone one last time. Just, please don't be angry when you see me. And then the call went dead, leaving only the silence of the house and the weight of everything I was about to confront. I stood there for a long second, staring at the door like it was a doorway to another life, one I wasn't sure I was ready to walk back into. But she was out there, in the snow, waiting. My hand trembled slightly as I wrapped my fingers around the cold doorknob. For some reason, I breathed in first, slow, steady, as if the air itself could prepare me for what I was about to see. Then I opened the door. A gust of winter air swept in, crisp and biting. Snowflakes drifted across the porch like tiny, glowing embers from a cold fire. And there she was, standing at the bottom of my steps, bundled in an oversized coat that didn't quite belong to her. Head slightly bowed. Hands clutched together as if she was bracing herself for judgment. When she finally lifted her face, my heart lurched. It was her. Older, yes, life had carved its lines, softened some parts, hardened others. Her hair held more silver. Her eyes were heavier. But it was unmistakably her. The same girl I once knew. The same friend I once trusted with everything. The same person who disappeared without a word, leaving a hole in my life I never fully patched. She whispered, almost inaudible. Hi. The word hit harder than any long confession could. I stepped outside slowly, the snow crunching beneath my feet. She didn't move. Just watched me with that careful expression, as if expecting me to shut the door, or turn away, or tell her she had no right to come back after all these years. Are you cold? I asked quietly. She gave a small, shaky laugh. Terrified more than cold. I didn't know whether to smile or let the ache in my chest show, so I just nodded. You didn't have to run, I said. You could have knocked. Her eyes dropped. I didn't think you'd open the door. Something inside me softened then, not because everything was forgiven, but because I could hear the truth in her voice. Years of regret. Frozen fear. A longing she clearly didn't know how to carry. I motioned gently toward the house. Come inside. You look like you've been standing out here a while. She hesitated, her breath forming small clouds in the air. I don't know if I deserve to, she murmured. You left a letter on Christmas, I said. That has to mean something. For a moment, her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with something deeper. A kind of hope she didn't dare speak aloud. She took one cautious step toward me. Then another. Until she was finally standing in the warm glow of my porch light. But when she reached the threshold, she paused, almost like there was an invisible line she wasn't sure she was allowed to cross. Before I go in, she whispered, you should know, there's more to the letter. Things I couldn't bring myself to write. Things I'm scared to say out loud. I swallowed hard. Then say them inside. You don't have to freeze out here. She nodded slowly, as though borrowing courage from my voice. And just as she stepped inside, just as the warmth of the house touched her face, she looked up at me with an expression I hadn't seen since we were young. The look of someone who's about to tell the truth. No matter how much it hurts. The door clicked shut behind us, sealing out the cold wind, and suddenly the silence inside my house felt too loud, too intimate. She stood just inside the entryway, her boots dripping melted snow onto the floor, her eyes drifting over the familiar space as though it was both comforting and painful. I gestured toward the living room. Come sit. You look like you're carrying a whole winter on your shoulders. She managed a faint, tired smile. Feels like more than just winter. I poured her a cup of tea, something warm, something safe. She held it with both hands, as if absorbing the heat through her palms. For a moment, we just sat there, the quiet only broken by the soft ticking of the old clock on the wall. Finally, she exhaled. I've replayed this moment in my head 1,000 times, she began softly. How you'd look at me. What you'd say. Whether you'd walk out of the room the second I started talking. I'm still here, I said gently. She nodded once, gathering the courage to continue. Back then, back when we were still close. I was going through something I didn't tell anyone about. Her voice shook slightly. I should have told you. You deserve to know. What was it? I asked quietly. She stared into her tea like she was reading memories in the steam. My family looked perfect from the outside, she said. Everyone thought we were this sweet, church-going, picture-perfect group. But inside that house, everything was falling apart. Her throat tightened, words briefly sticking. My mother was sick. Worse than anyone realized. And my father. She blinked back something unshed. My father couldn't handle it. He disappeared into himself. Into alcohol. Into anger. A chill ran through me. He never hurt me, she added quickly. Not physically. But sometimes neglect can feel like its own kind of violence. I swallowed hard. You went through all that alone? She laughed softly, bitterly. Alone was easier. Or at least I kept telling myself that. Then her eyes met mine. Clearer now, braver. The night I disappeared, it wasn't planned. It wasn't something I chose because I wanted to leave you. I left because staying felt like drowning. She paused, letting the weight of that truth settle between us. And the letter I left on your doorstep today, it wasn't meant to reopen old wounds. It was meant to close one. I frowned slightly. What do you mean? Her breath trembled as she spoke. There's something I need you to know. Something I've hidden for 20 years. And maybe you'll hate me for it. Or maybe you'll understand. I honestly don't know anymore. She set the tea down, hands trembling just enough for me to notice. But I can't carry it alone anymore, she said. And you're the only person I ever trusted with the truth. I leaned slightly forward. What truth? Her lips parted. Her breath caught. And then she whispered the beginning of a confession that made every hair on my arm stand on end. It wasn't just me who left that night. For a moment, the world felt impossibly still. Even the old clock on the wall seemed to stop ticking, as if time itself leaned in to listen. I swallowed. What do you mean, it wasn't just you who left? She clasped her hands together, knuckles pale, eyes fixed on the carpet. I never told anyone this. Not the police, not my relatives, not the few friends I had left. I only wrote it down once, in a letter I burned the same night. My breath caught. She looked up. And there was fear in her eyes, but also a kind of desperate relief. There was someone with me, she whispered. Who? I asked slowly. Who left with you? She hesitated, then lifted her trembling hands and pressed them flat against her chest. A child, she said. A little girl. My heart dropped, an icy, unfamiliar weight settling in my stomach. A child? I breathed. Whose child? She looked at me with a sorrow I've never seen on anyone's face. Mine. My entire body went still. I'd known her since we were kids. We'd grown up together. We'd shared secrets, dreams, fears, or at least I thought we had. You had a daughter? I said quietly. Back then? When we were 18. She nodded slowly. I hid my pregnancy. My mother helped me. She said she'd cover for me until I could figure out what to do. But she got too sick, too fast. By the time the baby came, everything at home was falling apart. I felt my pulse pounding beneath my skin. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, not angry, but stunned, aching. Because, she said softly, voice breaking, I knew you. And if you knew, you would have tried to save me. And I couldn't let you give up your whole life because of my choices. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. The night I left, it was because I had no other choice. My father had found out. He was furious. He demanded I give the baby away. And when I refused, she swallowed hard. I realized staying meant losing her forever. So you ran, I whispered. She nodded. I ran in the middle of the night. I took her. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't even take her birth certificate. Her voice cracked. I just ran. The room felt suddenly small, too full of memories, of years, of everything we'd never said. I took a slow breath. And your daughter, where is she now? She closed her eyes. That, she whispered, is why I came back. A chill moved down my spine. She's gone. I froze. Gone, how? The words barely made it out. She opened her eyes again, tears shimmering but unfallen. That's the part I've been terrified to say out loud, she said. But you need to know. Because what happened to her begins here. In this town. She leaned forward, voice trembling. And it begins with you. The moment I stepped back outside, the air felt sharper, almost expectant. Snow had just begun drifting down in soft flakes, the kind that melt on your eyelashes before you even notice. I tucked the envelope deeper into my coat pocket, feeling the edges crinkle against my ribs. I don't know why, but it felt heavier now, heavier than paper should ever feel. As I walked toward the sidewalk, the town's Christmas lights flickered on all at once, like the whole neighborhood had been holding its breath. Warm, gold, and red reflections danced over the fresh snow, and for a moment I felt like I'd stepped back in time. Back to being that kid who used to press his face against frosted windows, waiting for Santa. Waiting for family. But nostalgia only carried me so far. Because just then, my phone buzzed. A single text. From an unknown number. You weren't supposed to find that. My legs stopped working for a second. The snow continued piling on my shoulders while my breath fogged out in front of me. Was this a joke? A scam? Or did someone know about the letter I just picked up? I looked around slowly, scanning the quiet street. Nothing moved except a woman walking her dog across the way. Christmas music drifted faintly from a house nearby, something classic, Bing Crosby, I think. Everything looked normal. Every house seemed safe. Every window glowed with that warm holiday comfort. And yet, someone out there was watching. I swallowed, shoved my phone back into my pocket, and kept walking, faster this time. A block later, I stopped under a street lamp. The snow was falling so heavily now it looked like I was inside a shaken snow globe. I pulled out the envelope again. Still sealed. Still mysterious. But the text message kept flashing in my mind like a warning sign. If I opened this, would I be crossing a line I couldn't uncross? My heart thudded. My fingers trembled. I almost tore it open, right then, right there. But something made me freeze. A sound. Behind me. A crunch in the snow. Someone was there. Watching. Close. And I realized. This wasn't just a letter. And this wasn't just a coincidence. Something about this Christmas. Something about this year. Something about that letter. It was pulling me into a story I didn't understand yet. But I was already in too deep to walk away. I didn't turn around at first. I just stood there under the street lamp, snow piling on my shoulders, pretending I hadn't heard anything. Sometimes when you freeze, the world gives you a second chance to stay invisible. But the sound came again. A slow, deliberate crunch in the snow. Not wind. Not imagination. Someone was there. My breath came out in one long cloud as I finally forced myself to look over my shoulder. No one. At least, no one I could see. The street was empty, the houses calm and glowing with Christmas lights. A wreath on a door across the road swayed gently in the wind. But the feeling wouldn't leave, the feeling that the shadows were watching me just as closely as I watched them. I tightened my grip on the sealed envelope. That stupid, small, deceptively innocent envelope. Another text buzzed. Same unknown number. Go home. No. My stomach dropped. I should have ignored it. I should have tossed the envelope in the nearest trash can. I should have walked away from whatever this was. But I couldn't. Because right then, right as panic was settling in, another thought hit me. Something I had somehow missed until now. The handwriting on the front of the envelope. It looked familiar. Not recently familiar. Faint memory from years ago familiar. Like a name I used to hear every day. Like a voice that once filled our house during the holidays. I brushed snow off the front of the envelope and held it closer to the street lamp. The loops. The slant of the letters. The hesitation in the lower strokes, just like they always had. My heart thumped once, hard. It looked like my father's handwriting. But that made no sense. None. Because he's been gone for years. A rush of cold swept through me that had nothing to do with the weather. I took a step back, gripping the envelope so tightly the edges curled. If this letter was really from him. If it was really meant for me. Then someone else knew about it. Someone who didn't want me to read it. A sudden gust of wind blew down the street, sending snow swirling like white smoke. That's when I saw it. A figure. Standing at the far end of the block. Still. Watching. I couldn't see their face, just a dark outline against the glowing Christmas lights. And the moment our eyes seemed to meet, they turned and disappeared into the falling snow. I felt something shift inside me then. A mixture of fear, confusion, and something else. Determination. Whatever this letter was. Whoever wanted to stop me. I was going to find out the truth. No matter what waited on the other side of that envelope. I didn't go straight home. Some instinct, quiet but certain, told me that if someone was watching me, waiting for me, home was the last place I should lead them. So instead, I stepped into the small community park a block away. The swings creaked in the cold wind, and snow coated the benches like white blankets. A single lamppost flickered above the path, giving the whole place that eerie, too quiet feeling only winter nights can create. I sat down beneath it, my breath shaking as I stared at the envelope in my hands. My father's handwriting. It couldn't be. Unless. No. I wasn't ready for the possibilities that thought opened. Still, my fingers worked on their own. Slowly. Carefully. I broke the seal. The paper inside was old. Older than I expected. The fold lines were soft, like they'd been opened and closed many times before. And there, at the top corner, a date. December 24th, 2005. My heart thudded painfully. I was a kid then. My father was still with us. Still fine. Still smiling. Still alive. Why write a letter then? And why hide it now? The letter began simply. My dear. The rest of the name was smudged. Water damage maybe, or tears. I didn't know. I swallowed hard and read on. If you're reading this, something has happened that I didn't have the courage to explain while I was still with you. Christmas should never carry a burden, but I fear the truth may find you one day. And if it does, I want you to be prepared. Prepared for what? My breaths were getting shorter. A knot was tightening in my chest. There are people who may come looking for what I've left behind. They may try to convince you that it doesn't concern you. But it does. More than you know. A cold wave washed through me. This sounded like some kind of warning. Like he knew something was coming. I kept reading, hands trembling. No matter what anyone says, trust only what you find yourself. Not what you're told. And whatever you do, do not let them have the key. The key? What key? The letter ended abruptly, as if he'd been interrupted mid-thought. If they've already found you, then remember what I said in. The last word stopped halfway through. The ink faded out, dissolving into the paper. That was it. No signature. No instructions. Just fear. Fear he never showed us. I lowered the paper slowly, my pulse pounding in my ears. A key? People looking for it? My father hiding something on purpose? And then something clicked in the back of my mind. A memory. Faint, but clear enough to sting. My father's workshop. The little wooden Christmas ornament he carved every year. One of them had never opened properly. No matter how many times I tried as a kid. What if? No. Could it be that simple? Could it be that? I stood up quickly, snow spraying off the bench. If someone was after this so-called key? If they were watching me tonight? Then the ornament, the one I still kept in a box in my closet. It might be the reason. My father may have hidden something inside it. Something he never had the chance to explain. I folded the letter and tucked it deep into my coat pocket. Then I started walking briskly toward home, not caring if anyone was following now. If they wanted the truth, they'd have to race me for it. I didn't run home, but I walked fast enough that the cold air burned in my lungs. My father's letter felt like it weighed 100 pounds in my pocket, each word replaying itself over and over. Don't let them have the key. Who were they? Who was watching me Christmas night? And what exactly had my father been afraid of 20 years ago? By the time I reached my porch, my hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from adrenaline. The house looked normal. Peaceful. Warm light spilled from the living room window. But normal didn't mean safe. Not tonight. I unlocked the door quietly and slipped inside. The familiar scent of pine wreaths and cinnamon candles greeted me, comforting, but it only made the unease in my stomach twist even tighter. I locked the door behind me, double-checking it out of instinct. Then I went straight to my bedroom closet. The box was still where I left it. A faded green container labeled Christmas Past. My heart thumped as I lifted the lid. Old ornaments, tangled lights, a few photographs. And then, there it was. The wooden ornament my father carved the year before he passed. A small round snowflake with a tiny latch on the side. A latch that never opened, no matter how hard I tried as a kid. I held it in my hand, the wood smooth and familiar. But tonight it felt different. Heavier. Purposeful. I sat on the floor, crossed my legs, and gently tested the latch again. As expected, it didn't budge. Not even a little. But I wasn't a kid anymore, and I had tools. I grabbed a thin precision screwdriver from my desk drawer and carefully wedged it into the small seam along the ornament's edge. I hesitated, just for a second. Breaking something my father made felt wrong. Like crossing some emotional line. But he left me a letter. He hid something. He wanted me to find it. I applied pressure. A soft crack echoed in the quiet room. The ornament split in half. Inside was not a key, not a code, not a note, but a tiny metal capsule. The size of a pen cap, tightly sealed, with a symbol etched on the side. A snowflake crossed with a small star. My breath caught. I had never seen that symbol before. Not on anything my father owned. I twisted the capsule open slowly. My hands were trembling again. Inside was a rolled piece of paper, thin, delicate, and aged like the letter. I unrolled it carefully, flattening it with my fingertips. And what I saw didn't make sense. Not at first. It wasn't a message. It wasn't instructions. It was a map. A hand-drawn map. Of the town. From decades ago. And circled. On the outskirts, near the old mill that burned down 15 years back, was a symbol matching the one on the capsule. A snowflake and star. And beneath it, my father's unmistakable handwriting. If you've come this far, follow the lights. Lights? What lights? Nothing had been there since the fire, just an empty lot and charred remains. Everyone said the place was unsafe, condemned. But my father thought otherwise. I was still staring at the map when a sharp knock rattled my front door. Not a gentle tap. Not a neighbor. Not a friend. It was firm. Precise. Authoritative. My pulse surged. They found me. Whoever they were here. At my door. And I wasn't ready. Not yet. The knock came again. louder this time. More deliberate. I froze in the center of my room, fingers still curled around the brittle map. My breath felt thin, like the air had suddenly been sucked out of the house. Whoever stood outside wasn't knocking out of courtesy. It sounded like someone who already expected to be let in. I slipped the map and ornament pieces into my pocket and moved silently toward the hallway, careful not to let the old floorboards creak. Another knock. 3 sharp, evenly spaced hits. No voice. No calling my name. Just waiting. I peeked around the corner toward the front door. The porch light cast long shadows across the floor, but from where I stood, I could only see the bottom of the door and the silhouette of 2 feet. Boots. Heavy ones. Not good. I took a step back and felt my heartbeat hammering against my ribs. I don't know what I was expecting, a neighbor, a delivery driver, a lost traveler, but everything in my gut screamed that this wasn't any of those. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text. From Mom. Everything okay? The porch light flickered. Thought I saw someone outside. My stomach dropped. If she saw someone, it meant this wasn't just a random visit. And then a voice finally came from the other side of the door. A man's voice, low and too calm. We know you're inside. I stopped breathing. We just want to talk. That was always the line, wasn't it? The one people said before things went terribly wrong. I didn't answer. Didn't move. Didn't blink. A moment of silence. Then the doorknob turned. Slowly. Thank God I had locked it. But the sound of the metal scraping sent a shiver through me. I backed away 1 step. Then another. My mind racing. The man jiggled the knob once more, harder this time. Then he said something that chilled me far more than the December air ever could. Your father would want you to open the door. I nearly dropped my phone. How did he know my father? How did he know what I found tonight? I forced myself to breathe, even though it felt impossible. I stepped back into my bedroom and quietly closed the door. I needed time. I needed a plan. And above all, I needed to get out of the house. Now. I knew this place better than anyone. If I moved fast, I could slip out the back door and reach my car before whoever he was realized I was gone. I grabbed my coat, stuffed the map, the capsule, and the letter into my pocket, and a crash echoed from the living room. Glass. Breaking. He was inside. I didn't think. Didn't hesitate. I bolted for the back door, my pulse pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else. Outside, the cold night air slapped me awake. I sprinted toward my car, my keys shaking in my hand. I didn't look back. Couldn't. I jammed the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life. And I sped down the road, tires spitting gravel. When I reached the first stop sign, I finally dared a glance in the rearview mirror. My house was shrinking in the distance. But the porch light was still flickering, just like Mom said. And beneath it, a shadow stepped out onto the porch. Tall. Steady. Like he wasn't chasing me. But watching. Waiting. And then, as the road curved and the house disappeared from view, my phone buzzed again. A new message. Unknown number. 1 sentence. If you want answers, follow the lights. The same words my father wrote. I stared at the text glowing on my screen. My breath fogged the air inside the cold car, and for a moment, I didn't move. If you want answers, follow the lights. The same exact message my father had left in the secret letter. The same phrase circled on the hidden map. Whoever broke into my house wasn't guessing. He knew. He knew everything. I drove with shaking hands, my headlights cutting through the dark road like two narrow blades. Pine trees lined both sides of the highway, crowding the shoulders as if leaning in to eavesdrop on my thoughts. My father had written that message 20 years ago. And now someone else was repeating it. Nearly word for word. That wasn't coincidence. It was choreography. I just wasn't the one leading the dance. A few miles out of town, the woods swallowed the last of the streetlights. The night was silent. Unnaturally silent. Then, a single light blinked ahead of me. Not my imagination. Not a star. A real, physical light hanging in the darkness. As I got closer, I saw it was an old road lantern. Rusty metal. Cracked glass. Dangling from a tree branch as if someone had strung it there minutes ago. I slowed the car to a crawl. My heart thudded deep in my chest. Another lantern appeared deeper into the trees, faintly glowing. Then another. And another. A narrow dirt path formed between them, illuminated in a soft amber line that cut straight into the forest. This was it. The lights. The path my father wanted someone, me, to follow someday. But why me? Why now? And why on Christmas? I rolled down the window, letting the cold air bite my face. The forest smelled of pine, damp earth, and something older. Like forgotten memories clinging to the trees themselves. The last lantern on the roadside flickered. As if urging me. Inviting me. I pulled the car off to the shoulder, grabbed my flashlight, and stepped out into the night. My boots sank into the soft dirt as I followed the lanterns deeper into the woods. Each step felt heavier, weighted with 20 years of unanswered questions. I kept hearing the intruder's voice in my head. That low, steady tone as he said, "Your father would want you to open the door." How could he possibly know what my father wanted? My father barely spoke about his past. He didn't leave clues. He didn't create treasure hunts. He wasn't the mysterious type. Unless, he had more than any of us realized. After about 5 minutes of walking, the lanterns ended abruptly. The final one hung above a wooden signpost swallowed by moss. I brushed away the grime with my sleeve. There were words carved into it. Simple, uneven, but unmistakable. Find the truth where the river split. The river split. My father mentioned that once, only once, when I was a kid. He said it was where he made the hardest decision of his life. I thought he meant something sentimental. A youthful mistake. A metaphor. But now it felt literal. Real. Urgent. A chill crawled up my spine as I realized the lantern glow around me was fading. Someone had lit them recently. Very recently. I spun around, scanning the trees, my breath quickening. The forest was still empty. Still quiet. Too quiet. I took one step back toward the path. And heard a twig snap behind me. Not an animal. A foot. A human foot. I whipped my light toward the sound, hands trembling. The beam landed on a man standing between the trees. His face was shadowed, but I could see the outline of him. Tall. Still. Deliberate. He didn't move toward me. Didn't speak. He simply lifted his hand and pointed. Past me, deeper into the woods. Toward the direction of the river split. Then he said, in the same voice I heard through my door. You're almost there. My throat tightened. My instinct screamed to run. But another part of me, the part that still missed my father every Christmas, forced me to stand my ground. I swallowed hard. "Who are you?" I whispered. He didn't answer. He only nodded once. Slow, purposeful. As if giving permission. Then he stepped backward into the shadows until the darkness swallowed him whole. I stood alone beneath the final lantern, gripping my flashlight so tightly my knuckles throbbed. Whatever waited at the river split. It was something my father wanted me to see. And something someone else was desperate for me to reach. And I had just crossed the point of no return. The forest swallowed me as I walked, each step sinking deeper into cold soil. I kept my flashlight pointed straight ahead, but the beam felt painfully small compared to the vast darkness pressing in on all sides. The river split wasn't far now. I could hear it before I saw it. A low, steady rush of winter water cutting through the woods like a living pulse. But something felt different. The air charged. Heavy. Like the forest itself was bracing for what I was about to discover. After another minute, the trees finally opened into a clearing, and there it was. The river. Wide. Black. Glittering beneath the moonlight like a blade made of water. And there, right where the current divided around a jagged rock, stood a small wooden structure. Not a cabin. Not a shed. A boathouse. Old, weather-worn, leaning slightly to one side as if bowing to the river that shaped it. My breath caught in my throat. My father used to bring me fishing here when I was 8. But we never stepped inside the boathouse. He always kept the door locked, always saying, "Some places aren't meant for memories yet." At the time, I thought he meant it was unsafe. But now I wasn't sure he meant the building at all. Maybe it was the truth inside it that wasn't ready. I approached slowly. Each footstep seemed to echo far too loudly in the cold night. The wooden door was shut tight, but not locked. That alone made my pulse spike. Someone had been here. Maybe still was. I wrapped my hand around the rusted metal handle and pushed. The hinges groaned open, revealing the dim interior. Dust floated in the air like drifting snowflakes, and the faint moonlight spilling through a small cracked window revealed a table. Just one. And on it, a box. An old metal lockbox, dented with age, covered in faded stickers my father used to collect from national parks. I recognized one instantly. Acadia. The place he always said he wished he could redo. My fingers trembled as I approached the table. The box wasn't locked. It wasn't even closed properly. Someone had opened it, and left it ajar. Inside, I found a folded map, a Polaroid photo, and an envelope with my name on it, written in my father's handwriting asterisk. My knees nearly buckled. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Why would he hide this out here? Why not give it to me while he was alive? What was he protecting me from? I picked up the Polaroid first. It showed a teenage boy, maybe 16, standing in this exact boathouse. Dark hair. Nervous smile. A bruise visible under his left eye. And beside him, my father. Younger. Thinner. Arm around the boy's shoulder. The caption at the bottom read, "Christmas Eve, the night he chose his path." I blinked slowly. Chose his path? Whose path? My father's? The boy's? And then a deeper realization hit me. The boy wasn't me. And he wasn't anyone I recognized. I felt my pulse slam against my ribs. Why was my father here with this stranger? What happened that night? Why was someone bruised? The forest creaked outside as the cold wind swept past the boathouse walls. But I forced my attention to the envelope. My name felt heavy on the front, like every stroke of the pen had been carved instead of written. I slid a finger under the flap and opened it carefully. Inside was a single, short message. Heartfelt, shaky, written in my father's familiar slanted handwriting. If you're reading this, then you found what I couldn't protect. The truth doesn't end here. It begins with the boy in the photo. Find him. Before they do. My breath froze. Before they do. Who was they? And why did it sound like my father had been running from someone long before I ever knew? As I lowered the note, something in the corner of the boathouse caught my eye. A fresh footprint in the dust. Not mine. Larger. Recent. Maybe made within the last hour. A second footprint followed. Then a third. They led toward the back door of the boathouse. I swallowed hard, turning slowly. My flashlight trembled. As I shined it toward the back exit, the door creaked open. Someone was standing there. A silhouette. Tall. Still. Watching me. My heart slammed against my chest. Then, in a low voice I recognized instantly, the man from the woods said, "You weren't supposed to find that yet." My blood ran cold. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the handwriting on those letters. Dad's younger, steadier script. Mom's softer curls, and the unfamiliar, trembling lines of the person who delivered them. By dawn, the house was still. Snow had stopped falling, leaving a white hush over everything. Mom sat at the kitchen table, turning her coffee mug slowly between her hands. "Did you read the last line again?" she asked without looking up. I nodded. "Light the candle when you're ready, and I'll come home." We didn't know what home meant. We didn't know who the writer was. But the candle, the small red holiday candle left inside the final envelope, sat on our kitchen counter like it carried the weight of a lifetime. Mom touched the wick gently. "It's been 30 years since that Christmas," she whispered. "I thought I'd buried it all." Her voice cracked on the last word. That's when a memory hit me, Christmas Eve, decades earlier. Dad answering a phone call, stepping outside, and returning with tears he tried to hide. Mom staring at the door all night, waiting for someone who never came. I was too young then to understand. Now it felt like the pieces were finally clicking into place. "Do you think we're ready?" I asked. Before Mom answered, there was a soft knock at the door. Not loud. Not urgent. Just a patient tap, like someone who already knew they'd be welcomed. Mom and I froze. The knock came again. A slow, steady rhythm. My heart hammered so hard I felt it in my throat. I stepped towards the door, but Mom's hand caught my arm. "No," she said gently. "I'll get it." She walked to the door with a resolve I hadn't seen in years, maybe ever. She took a breath, unlocked it, and pulled it open. The cold rush of winter air swept in. And standing on our porch was a silhouette. Tall. Still. Bundled in an old green coat dusted with snow. Mom's breath left her body in a single, broken gasp. The figure bowed his head. "Mary," he whispered. "It's me." And for the first time, I realized the candle wasn't meant to summon someone from a distance. He'd already been here. He'd been waiting for us. For a moment, none of us moved. The cold air from the open door wrapped around my ankles, but I couldn't step forward. I couldn't breathe. The man on our porch kept his head bowed, snow melting in his hair and sliding down the sides of his weathered coat. Mom whispered, barely audible, "I thought you were dead." The man swallowed hard. "I almost was," he said, voice rough from years, or maybe from memories he hadn't spoken of in decades. But I never stopped trying to come back. Mom lifted a trembling hand to her mouth. Tears welled up, sparkling like tiny crystals in the doorway light. I finally found my voice. Who are you? He looked up at me then, and the porch light hit his eyes, gray-blue, just like my mother's. Eyes that held decades of regret and something dangerously close to hope. I'm your uncle, he said softly. Your father's older brother. My knees nearly buckled. My father never talked about having a brother. Not once. Not even in passing. It was as if the man standing on our porch had been erased from our entire family story. Dad never mentioned. I know, he cut in. He tried to protect you from the choice I made. And from the consequences that followed. Mom stepped out onto the porch, shutting the door halfway behind her. You disappeared on Christmas Eve, she said, voice shaking. You didn't just leave, you vanished. The police searched for months. Your mother, she never recovered. He closed his eyes. That's why I'm here. To explain. And to give back what I took. Mom stiffened. What you took? He reached into his coat. My heart lurched until he pulled out a small, metal tin the size of a jewelry box. The lid was dented. The paint chipped. But when Mom saw it, her hands flew to her chest. Oh my God, is that? Yes, he said simply. He held it out with both hands, like he was offering a piece of his own soul. This belonged to your father, he said, turning to me. And inside is the reason I had to disappear. I stared at the tin, my pulse throbbing in my neck. Why now? I asked. He gave a sad, thin smile. Because somebody else is looking for it again. And this time, they know where you live. A tremor sliced through the still night air. Behind us, the single red candle on the kitchen counter flickered. As if something unseen had just crossed the threshold. I closed the door behind us, locking it almost on instinct. Mom stood frozen in the hallway, her eyes locked on the dented tin in my uncle's hands as if it were something radioactive, something capable of destroying everything we thought we knew. Sit down, Mom whispered. It sounded less like an invitation and more like a plea. Both of you. We settled around the kitchen table. The red candle on the counter burned low, casting long, trembling shadows across the walls. My uncle placed the tin gently on the table, like it was fragile or dangerous. My voice came out barely steady. What exactly is that? He exhaled, a weary, hollow breath. This tin, he said, tapping it lightly, holds the reason our family broke apart. And the reason dangerous people want it back. Mom flinched. You promised Dad you destroyed it. I did. Or I thought I did. But life has a way of digging up what we bury. He looked at me then. I think you should be the one to open it. My stomach tightened. Why me? Because, he said quietly, you're the only one in this family who hasn't run from the truth. I didn't know whether that was a compliment or a warning. With shaking fingers, I pulled the tin closer. The metal was ice cold, like it had been sitting outside for hours instead of minutes. The lid resisted at first, then gave way with a soft metallic click. Inside was nothing I expected. Just a folded piece of paper. Not money. Not photographs. Not keys to some hidden property. Just a letter. It was yellowed at the edges, creased from being opened and closed too many times. On the front was a single name, written in a shaky hand. Evelyn. My mother gasped. That's your middle name, my uncle finished. He wrote it to you. The night before he died. My heart stopped. Dad wrote this? I whispered. My uncle nodded. And he told me to get rid of it so you'd never carry his burden. But I couldn't do it. I kept it. And someone must have found out. I stared at the letter, feeling its weight despite its size. What's in it? I asked. My uncle's expression changed, tightened, darkened. That's the part I've never read. Mom pressed her hand to her mouth. Her eyes brimmed with tears. Her breath shook. I slowly unfolded the letter. But before I could read a single word, a loud knock rattled the front door. Not a friendly knock. Not a neighbor checking in. A heavy, deliberate pounding. My uncle's face went pale. They found us, he whispered. The pounding hit the door again, 3 sharp, deliberate blows that vibrated through the house like a warning. Mom jumped. My uncle stood up so fast his chair scraped across the floor. I held the letter in my hands, frozen between reading it and running from it. Don't move, Uncle whispered. He stepped toward the hallway, keeping low, like he'd done this before, recently. Too recently. The knocking became harder. More impatient. More certain. Open up, a voice barked. A man's voice, deep, commanding, and way too familiar. My uncle's eyes went wide with recognition. No, no, it can't be him. Mom grabbed my arm so tightly I felt her nails through my sweater. Who is it? I whispered. Uncle didn't answer. He peeked through the narrow curtain by the entryway. Only a fraction of a second, but long enough. He turned back to us, his face ashen. It's Dalton. Mom's breath caught. The same Dalton? From the... Yes, Uncle snapped. The one Dad warned us about. My heart hammered against my ribs. I didn't know much about Dalton, only that whenever his name came up, which was rare, the room always went quiet. And Dad's face, it would change. Harden. Darken. Now he was at our door. On Christmas night. Demanding entry. I'll handle him, Uncle whispered. Mom shook her head violently. No, you can't trust him. You never could. Trust has nothing to do with it. My uncle reached into his coat pocket. And pulled out a small black device. Not a weapon. A remote. What's that? I asked. He swallowed. It's connected to a safety measure your father put in place. A long time ago. In case Dalton ever came back. The pounding grew louder, angrier. Open the door. No. I flinched, clutching the letter closer to my chest. Uncle motioned us backward. To the pantry. Both of you. Quietly. Mom and I slipped into the narrow pantry off the kitchen, shutting the door just enough to see through the crack. My uncle approached the front door slowly, remote in one hand, the other reaching for the deadbolt. He unlocked it. Mom's breath hitched. The door creaked open. A tall, broad-shouldered man stepped inside. Gray hair. Cold eyes. Heavy coat dusted with snow. He didn't look like someone stopping by for holiday cheer. He looked like trouble that never stopped knocking. Dalton scanned the room, then focused directly on my uncle. Well, he said, voice low and oily. Merry Christmas. My uncle didn't move. What do you want? Dalton smiled. The same thing I wanted 20 years ago. Then his gaze shifted. Past my uncle. Past the kitchen. Straight toward the pantry. As if he could feel us hiding there. I'm here for the letter. Dalton's words froze the air. He's here for the letter. Mom's hand clamped over her mouth beside me, muffling a gasp. I could feel her shaking, even her breathing was uneven, quick, terrified. My uncle didn't back up. Didn't blink. Didn't show a single inch of fear. That letter, he said slowly, was never meant for you. Dalton stepped forward, boots crunching on the old hardwood. Everything in this house is my business now. No, my uncle snapped. It never was. Dalton's smile curled cruelly. Then why, he murmured, did your brother spend his last years hiding it from me? My heart jumped. Dad? Dad hid this letter from him? I clutched the envelope tighter against my chest. The edges were warm from my hand, and from the fear pulsing through me. Dalton looked around the room, each glance calculated, searching. You know, he added, running a gloved finger across the mantel, I always admired how your family tried to keep secrets. You weren't very good at it, but you did try. My uncle raised the remote device slightly. Don't take another step. Dalton chuckled. You think that little switch scares me? It should, Uncle replied, voice low. A tense silence stretched between them, thick, heavy, suffocating. From our hiding spot, I could hear my own heartbeat louder than the Christmas clock ticking in the hallway. Finally, Dalton sighed, as if the stalemate bored him. Where are they? He asked. Uncle didn't answer. Dalton's jaw tightened. Don't play stupid. I know she found it. His eyes narrowed toward the pantry. She always was the curious one. Mom stiffened beside me. Dalton continued, voice softening, too soft. Come out. Both of you. I won't hurt you, unless you make me. His lie hung in the air like poison. My uncle stepped between Dalton and the kitchen. They're not coming out. Dalton's eyes hardened. Then we'll do this the difficult way. He reached into his coat. Not quickly, just slow enough to terrify. Mom whispered, no, please, no. I grabbed her hand, squeezing tight. I didn't know what Dalton was pulling out. A weapon? A document? Another letter? But before he revealed it, my uncle pressed the remote. A faint click echoed through the house. Dalton froze. Not from the sound itself, but from what it meant. You didn't, he growled. My uncle's voice dropped to a near whisper. Dad told me, if Dalton ever comes back, activate the failsafe. Dalton lunged forward. But the floor shuddered beneath him. A deep rumble vibrated through the walls. Mom clutched my arm, eyes wide. What's happening? I whispered. Uncle didn't take his eyes off Dalton, who was now struggling to keep his balance. The house, Uncle said, is no longer safe for him. Dalton staggered, grabbing the nearest table for support as the rumbling intensified. What did you do? He roared. Uncle finally looked straight at him. I locked you inside. Dalton's face twisted with fury. And then, from somewhere deep in the basement, a second, heavier clang echoed upward. Something had been activated. Something Dad built. Something he never told Mom or me about. Dalton's eyes widened in real fear for the first time. What did your father leave behind? He hissed. I looked down at the letter in my hands. Maybe. The answer was inside. The rumbling didn't stop. It grew deeper, like the house itself was waking up. Dalton stumbled again as another metallic clank rose from beneath the floorboards. The Christmas ornaments on the tree rattled, casting jittering reflections on the walls. Mom whispered, trembling. Your father, what did he build down there? Uncle didn't answer her. Instead, he stepped even closer to Dalton, remote still raised. You shouldn't have come back, he said. Dalton glared at him with pure hatred. You think this little trick is going to stop me? I know what's in that letter. I know what he left behind. I pressed the envelope tighter against my chest, my palms damp with sweat. I didn't know what Dad wrote, but something told me it wasn't small. Not simple. Not something one man would risk his life for, let alone build underground defenses to protect. Dalton straightened himself, his breathing uneven as the vibrations finally began to fade. I'm going downstairs, he said darkly. And you're not stopping me. Uncle blocked his path. You set one foot toward that basement, and I trigger the second failsafe. Dalton smirked. There is no second failsafe. My uncle's expression didn't change. And for the first time, doubt flickered in Dalton's eyes. He tried to hide it, but I saw it. A crack in his confidence. Mom tugged on my sleeve, whispering desperately. Sweetheart, maybe we should leave. Now. Before anything worse happens. I wanted to agree with her. Every instinct in me screamed to get her out of the house. But the letter felt heavy in my hands, like it was pulling me toward the truth. Something Dad wanted me to see. Something he hid for years, even from Mom. Something Dalton was willing to fight for, or destroy us to keep buried. And I couldn't ignore that. Before I could speak, the house groaned again, long, low, almost like a warning sigh. Dalton flinched. Uncle didn't. This house isn't on your side anymore, Uncle said quietly. Dad designed it that way. Dalton snarled, your father wasn't some mastermind, he was a paranoid old man with a talent for tinkering. Maybe, Uncle replied. But he knew you. Dalton's jaw clenched. I could feel something shifting. Not in the room, but in the story Dad had left behind. A puzzle piece falling into place. Dalton wasn't here by accident. He wasn't here for vengeance. He wasn't even here for us. He was here for whatever Dad hid, and Dad knew he would be. My throat tightened. I swallowed hard and finally stepped out from behind the pantry door. Mom gasped softly, grabbing for me. But I moved just out of her reach. Both men turned. Dalton's eyes lit up, vicious and triumphant. There you are, he whispered. My uncle went pale. What are you doing? Get back. But I stood my ground, lifting the envelope so both of them could see it clearly. This letter, I said, my voice shaking but loud, has answers. And I'm done being afraid of them. The room went silent. Dalton stared at the envelope like it was made of gold. Uncle's expression shifted from fear to something like awe. And Mom whispered my name, soft, breaking, scared. In that moment, I knew. Everything that happened next hinged on what was written inside this paper. And I was finally ready to open it. My fingers trembled as I slid them under the seal. The envelope felt older than I remembered. Soft at the edges, worn from being held too many times. Like Dad had prepared it long before he ever knew I would be the one to open it. Dalton took a single step forward. Uncle immediately lifted the remote again. Mom whispered, please, don't do this here. Not like this. But there was no stopping it now. I pulled out the folded sheet of paper. Thin, yellowed, and filled with Dad's handwriting. I hadn't seen his writing in years. The moment I did, every memory hit me at once. Christmas mornings, little notes he'd leave in my lunchbox. The way he always wrote in a rush, as if his thoughts were running ahead of him. My eyes blurred for a second. I blinked hard and began to read aloud. If you're holding this letter, it means I didn't get the chance to say goodbye properly. Mom gasped, covering her mouth. Uncle bowed his head. Dalton didn't move, he froze completely. I kept reading. There are things in this house, things in our family, that I kept hidden to protect you. The floor creaked under our feet, as if the house recognized the words. You were never supposed to be caught in the middle of this. Not you. My hands tightened around the paper. But if Dalton is there, then he's come for what he believes he's owed. Dalton's eye twitched. My voice wavered, but I pushed on. Son, I need you to understand something clearly. Dalton isn't your enemy. My breath caught. Mom's head jerked toward me. Uncle looked up sharply. Dalton blinked, like he expected to hear anything but that. I swallowed and kept reading. He's my mistake. Dalton's face hardened. A quiet, painful whisper slipped from him. Old man. I continued, heart pounding. Dalton is the result of a choice I'm not proud of, a choice I made before I ever met your mother. Mom stumbled back against the counter, tears spilling. Uncle steadied her with a shaking hand. Dalton closed his eyes, not angry, not triumphant. Just tired. Dad's letter kept going. When he found me years later, he wasn't looking for family. He was looking for answers. And I gave him some. But not all. Dalton's gaze snapped up. The house seemed to go still again. What he's after now isn't money, or property, or anything the world would consider valuable. He's after what I hid because it was never meant for him. I lowered the page for a moment, breath shallow. Dalton stared at me with a strange mixture of anger, and something like desperation. Mom was silently crying. Uncle's jaw clenched so tight I thought it might crack. What is it? Dalton rasped. What did he hide? I lifted the letter again, voice barely holding steady. Dad says, the truth is in the basement. A long, sharp silence filled the room. Dalton exhaled shakily. Uncle looked horrified. Mom whispered, no, not down there. I read the next line. If you're reading this with Dalton present, then it's too late to avoid it. You must go downstairs. My heart stopped. The letter ended with something handwritten hurriedly at the bottom. But whatever you do, don't go down alone. I looked up. The room felt suddenly colder. Dalton took a single step toward the basement door. I'm going, he growled. Uncle grabbed his arm. You're not going anywhere without the rest of us. Mom grabbed my hand tight, so tight it almost hurt. And me? For the first time in my life, I felt like the house was holding its breath. Waiting. Listening. Because whatever Dad hid down there was no longer waiting for him. It was waiting for us. The basement door had never felt intimidating before. But that night, Christmas Eve, it looked like the entrance to another world. Dalton reached for the handle first. Uncle yanked him back. You heard the letter. No one goes down alone. Mom squeezed my hand as though she already knew what we were about to find. I swallowed hard and nodded. So the four of us descended the wooden stairs together. Every step creaked, long, low groans that felt almost like warnings. The air grew colder. Dustier. Still. And when we reached the bottom, I realized something instantly. The basement wasn't the same as I remembered. The old boxes and camping gear were still there, but in the far corner. Behind an old workbench. A single string of dim Christmas lights glowed faintly. They wrapped around a wooden chest. A chest I had never seen before. Mom covered her mouth. Oh God, he kept it. Dalton stepped toward it like he was being pulled by gravity. His voice cracked. What is it? What did he hide from me? Uncle placed a firm hand on my shoulder. Go on. You open it. My breath wavered. My hands shook. But I moved forward. I knelt in front of the chest. Placed my fingers under the lid. Lifted. The hinges groaned open. Inside. Not gold, not bonds, not a will. But dozens of envelopes. All addressed to the same person. To Dalton. Dalton froze in place. Mom choked on a breath. Uncle turned away, wiping his eyes. Each envelope had a date in Dad's handwriting. Spanning nearly 20 years. One for every missed birthday. Every Christmas. Every year Dad never saw him. My throat tightened painfully. I picked up the top envelope and handed it to Dalton. He stared at it like it was something fragile, sacred. His voice shook. He wrote to me? Mom whispered, he wanted to reach you. He just didn't know how. Dalton's eyes brimmed. Not with anger this time. But with a grief so deep it looked like the weight of 20 years. He sank to the floor, opened the envelope with trembling hands. And began reading silently. None of us spoke. We just watched him. This man who had entered our house like a storm. Soften in real time. His shoulders trembled once. Twice. And finally he cried. Not loudly. Not violently. Just quietly. Like a boy who'd been waiting his whole life for someone to say his name. When he finished the letter, he wiped his face with the back of his sleeve. Then he looked at me. Not with resentment. Not with rivalry. Just humanity. He never stopped thinking of me, he whispered. I nodded. He didn't. Dalton placed the letter back into the chest with a reverence I didn't expect. Then he turned to Mom. I'm sorry, he said softly. For everything tonight. I didn't know. Mom stepped forward, not afraid anymore, and rested a gentle hand on his arm. Your family, she whispered. Maybe not in the way you hoped, but family nonetheless. Dalton took a shaky breath. Uncle exhaled in relief. And me? For the first time since Dad passed. I felt him there. In the quiet. In the cold. In the warmth rising slowly between all of us. Like he had planned this. Every letter, every message, every breadcrumb. To bring us together on this night. Christmas Eve. The night that always meant connection. Forgiveness. New beginnings. When we climbed back upstairs, Dalton paused at the doorway. I don't know what happens next, he murmured. I gave him a small smile. Then stay for tonight. No one should be alone on Christmas. He looked at each of us. Mom. Uncle. Me. Then he nodded. Just once. And stepped inside. Epilogue, Christmas morning. The next morning, the house smelled like cinnamon again. Mom humming softly. Uncle making coffee. Dalton sitting at the table, holding a second letter from the chest. He looked lighter. Different. He glanced up at me. You think he forgave me? He asked quietly. I sat across from him. I think he loved you, I answered. And I think this is what he wanted all along. Dalton nodded slowly. The Christmas lights flickered gently in the background. For the first time in years, our house felt whole again. Not perfect. Not healed overnight. But on its way. And that was enough.